A very good morning. Today is 24th July 2020. In this video, we'll be having a discussion of the Hindu editorial page. There are three articles to be discussed. The first article is regarding the national security piece by the Hong Kong, and the second article is on India and the non-alignment issue. What is a calibrated balance? And third article focuses upon the US closing Chinese machine that is escalating the tensions. Before I begin, I welcome you all to Wifise Study Karo. I am Prashant. If you're first to my channel, I request you all to subscribe so that you will get notified whenever I post a video. This is the first article. This is regarding the national security and peace in Hong Kong. It is in India's interest to maintain stability in Hong Kong, that is SAR means safeguard national security in Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, which marks a major turning point from the unrest to the peace and order, and a farewell to the history of unguarded national security in Hong Kong. This law is enacted for the purpose of ensuring a resolute, full of faithfulness implementation of the policy of one country and two systems, under which the people of Hong Kong administrator Hong Kong with a high degree of autonomy, safeguarding their national interest, preventing, suppressing and imposing punishment for the offences of the succession and subversion and organization and preparation of the terrorist activities and collusion with a foreign country or with the external element to endanger national security in the relation with Hong Kong, also maintaining prosperity and stability of Hong Kong. Such a turbulence over the amendment bill last year with support of foreign and the external forces, the anti-China forces have openly instigated that Hong Kong independence, separatist acts and a serious violence incident, which also highlighted a big national security loopholes in the city, and then Hong Kong had plunged into a gravest situation since their return, and the city had lost the title of the world's freest economy, and it had held for around 25 years. Also, its GDP registered a negative growth for the first time in the decade, and the unemployment rate hit a record high in nearly 10 years. So the effects and significance of this law is that national security legislation was enacted in the Standing Committee of China's National People Congress in accordance with the China's constitution and the basic law of HKSAR, that means Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. HKSAR means Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. This legislation plugs the legal loopholes and provides a strong institutional and legal safeguard for the national security in Hong Kong, which has significant effect on the long-term development of the city. This first legislation also points to four different guarantee schemes. That is, in first, the legislation will guarantee the sustained implementation of one country, two systems. That is, one country is a precondition of basis for the two systems. Only when the one country is safe and secure can the two systems be safeguarded. And the second, the legislation will protect the law, right and freedom to the Hong Kong residents. The legislation clearly stipulates the four types of criminal offences and the principles of the law, that is the rule of law, such as respecting and protecting the human rights. It will not only affect the protect the lawful rights and freedom of Hong Kong residents, and for a handful of people endangering the national security, the law is a sword hanging for the above. Yet the vast majority of Hong Kong residents, including the foreigners in the Hong Kong, the law is a guardian for their rights, freedom and peaceful life. And in the third point, the legislation will safeguard long-term prosperity and stability of Hong Kong. Without national security, there will be neither lasting peace, stability for the China, nor the long-term prosperity and stability for the Hong Kong. The legislation will help to restore the order and also to maintain the stability in Hong Kong and consolidate and enhance the Hong Kong's international finance trade. This also helps in shipping center statuses, further strengthen the confidence of foreign investors, and also create a better livelihood and living and business environment for the foreign nationals and enterprises in the Hong Kong. So the International Credit Rating Agency S&P had affirmed that A+ issuer credit rating on the Hong Kong and maintained an outlook as stable, which shows the international investors are confident in Hong Kong's future due to the implementation of this. The legislation is also firmly supported by the mainstream public opinion in Hong Kong and also forces of justice in the nearly international community. The 3 million people in Hong Kong have signed a petition in support of the enactment of the law, and more than 1.28 million have signed an online petition in opposition to the interference by the US and other external forces. More than 70 countries had voiced the support for the legislation at the 44th session of United Nations and Human Rights Council. And the internal affair is that national security legislation belongs to the sovereignty of the country and authority of central government. It is also justified that the Chinese governs the country and Hong Kong in accordance with the law. It is also spelled out that the constitution over the 100 countries that exercise the basic rights and freedoms shall not endanger national security. It's common practice in the world to safeguard the national security through legislation. Hong Kong and China's Hong Kong's affair with China internal affairs that allow no foreign interference. So this is regarding the Hong Kong interference. Some Western politicians use the national security as a legislation and excuse to the interference of in China's international affairs. So the Chinese government is firmly committed to safeguarding the nation's sovereignty, security and development interests, firmly committed to implementing one country and two systems, and firmly committed to opposing interference in Hong Kong affairs by external force. India and Hong Kong have a close economic trade relations. It serves India's interest to maintain the prosperity and stability in Hong Kong. And again, the national security legislation for the China and Hong Kong in legitimate rights and interests of foreign nationals in Hong Kong, including that India. We have hope of Indian friends can uphold the fairness and justice to respect and support Chinese efforts to safeguard the national security in Hong Kong in accordance with the law. This is regarding the implementation of the national security in Hong Kong by the Chinese government. One nation, two laws is the policy. The next article is on non-alignment movement between India. Non-alignment is a policy must be rethought, but India must be wary of alliance systems. So in a separate statement by the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, which laid out a world view in the face of global challenges, many of which pull it as in different directions, but Mr. Jaishankar's contention was that the non-alignment as a concept belonged to the bygone era, and that was a multipolarity in the world necessitated with the India would have take a definite stand and even take a risk on the issues such as connectivity, maritime security, terrorism and climate change. However, he made it clear that India does not reject non-alignment in its entire discussion, and that while it would no longer remain disentangled from the difficult decisions, it would not compromise on the independence. Moreover, it is important that India never been a part of any alliance system, nor will it be ever. So, but the left unsaid is that the hard reality that military collaborations on the land would prove problematic, that given India's disputed boundary with China, the venue of nearly 3 months long standoff between the China, that is PLA, People's Republic Alliance, and also Indian Army. India's constraints and avenues for its potential growth is that the assertion of India's strategic independence and resistance to joining any alliance comes as a timely reminder amid speculation that tensions with China will push India into a stronger clinch with Washington, which is on its own coalition course with Beijing. It is significant that despite multiple references by the US Secretary to India-China clashes, the death of Indian soldiers at Galwan Valley and his call for India and US to jointly counter China, the government has rightly chosen not to raise its tensions with China in any form than the bilateral talks with Beijing. So, equally significant that the government's outreach to Moscow, including visit by Defense Minister regarding Russia, India, China trilateral last month, and the External Affairs Minister comment that India should also seek to build coalition with the middle power such as European Union and Japan. At the time of a crisis, often clarifies the priorities. At a time of a double crisis of India battling the novel coronavirus pandemic in the country and the Chinese aggression at the border, the message from Delhi is one of the carefully calibrated balance. This is regarding the non-alignment of India and different countries. The next article is on the US closing Chinese mission. The downward spiral in US-China ties is bad news for the whole world. This is regarding the closing China's consulate in Houston is an unprecedented escalation in the steadily deteriorating ties between the world's two largest economies. That is the Chinese diplomats' mission in the country of the economic espionage, that is visa fraud and attempted theft of scientific research allegations that China had denied. It also announced that visa restrictions on students, that is the US announced a visa restriction and imposed sanctions of Chinese officials over Hong Kong security law, and is reportedly considering a sweeping travel ban on the millions of members of China's ruling Communist Party. The consulate decision is by far the most drastic measure. This is the first time the Chinese mission is being closed in the US since both countries normalized diplomatic relations since 1979. The tariff war by the President Trump launched in 2018, China has retaliated against every hostile move by US. Chinese made matters worse by providing refuge in its San Francisco consulate to one of the Chinese researchers against whom the US had issued arrest warrant. The US-China tensions are no longer about the trade and technology. What started as a trade had a snowball into larger geopolitical contest between the two superpowers, something that the world hasn't seen since the hostile competition between the US and Soviet Union during the Cold War. President Trump, who is under the attack at the home for his handling of novel coronavirus pandemic, may be finding comfort in ramping up the tension with China in an election year. But the crisis dangerous in the long term is that there is a growing consensus in Washington that a hostile China resorting a large-scale espionage poses a serious threat to US-dominated international orders. This in a line with the US president, that is in confrontational policy China towards the China, which is already done a serious damage to the bilateral relations, and this is regarding the Beijing is also acting more assertively in Asia, picking the fights in countries and its neighborhood from India to Vietnam, Malaysia. The message from China is that it is ready for a long game of escalation, or as long as US keeps playing. This is cyclical trap measures and the countermeasures talking ties to new loss of no possibility of exit. Regarding the deterioration, not asserted immediately, but the US and China risk is a total breakdown of diplomatic relations. It's really bad news for the whole world because they are the huge, enormous economies, world highest economies countries. That is the end of article discussion for today's. If you are new to my channel, I request you all to subscribe to my channel and so that you will be benefited. Thank you. Have a great day.